Disney has gotten a lot of flack for their live-action remakes of the beloved animated features that funded the company in the early years and brought them back on top during the Disney Renaissance. But I think these criticisms could be improved if they admitted one thing: that Disney has never been a wholly original company. Rather, adaptations and reinterpretations are the Disney way. They're what put Disney on the map, not wholly original features, but rather originality through remixing and reinterpretation. Take a look at many of the most popular Disney animated features, including Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, Cinderella, Bambi, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, The Jungle Book, and more. All are unoriginal in that they were adapted from stories that existed, in some cases centuries before. But audiences still love them despite the fact that they're not entirely original. It's because Disney is original through their adaptations. What Disney does much better than many of their competitors is that they're unafraid to adapt a work in whole or part for their own needs and audience. The Disney audience has always been children and families. The movies need to be family friendly. They can't get too dark, which is how many of these tales started or ended. Take for example the grim fairy tale version of Cinderella, which has the stepsisters inflict a horror on themselves in order to fit the slipper so they can be the princess beloved. In another example, the Brothers Grimm gathered inspiration of their interpretation of Sleeping Beauty from Giambattista Basile's Pentamerone, where the story is called Sun, Moon, and Talia, and whose implications are much darker. They toned it down, and Disney toned it down even further, giving us the 1959 classic. Disney's MO when it comes to successful adaptations is pretty simple. First, they find a story that already exists. This is true as recent as 2013's Frozen, where they took inspiration from Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen. The movie was a critical and commercial success. Finding good, existing stories in the form of fables, fairy tales, and novels to adapt isn't a cop-out. It would be a cop-out and an exercise in laziness if all they did was do a direct adaptation of the source material. It'd be impossible to do it right. You will always miss something when filming an adaptation. Just because something is written on the page does not mean it'll translate well to film. They're two different mediums. That's why it's called an adaptation. What's on the page must adapt to what's going to be on the screen. Disney does that better than pretty much anyone else. Second, understand the target audience, namely children. A lot of fairy tales and fables are written as morality tales. Their job is to instruct children on how to live a proper life and what to be wary of. The movies kept children as their demographic. The movies are fun and colorful, and yet still contain serious themes that can be appreciated on repeat viewings into adulthood. Third, leverage the adaptation to support the rest of the business. Walt Disney famously said, quote, "We don't make movies to make money, we make money to make more movies," end quote. Their early movies were wildly successful, and Disney, true to his word, plunged that money into making even more movies. There have been 61 movies under the Walt Disney Animation Studios banner, most of which have been critical and commercial successes. But that's not it. Disney leveraged the movies and characters to set up Disneyland, Disney World, and other lines of business, becoming a merchandising and licensing powerhouse. It's the perfect flywheel. One part of the business, the movies, supports another part, the parks, which supports another part, the merch, which continues to support the movies, which continues to support the parks, which continues to support the merch, and so on. Fourth, on the business front, Disney understands that merchandising is as important as franchising. At Disney, not every movie needs to be a sequel, but most need to have some kind of tie-in, often in the form of toys and stuff for kids. It helps build more recognition for whoever's face is on the toy or the backpack or whatever, and it keeps the money rolling in. Lastly, Disney understands that Disney is the franchise. The same can be said of Pixar, Lucasfilm, and Marvel. People think of Pixar when they think Toy Story. They think of Lucasfilm when they think of Star Wars. No one thinks of Warner Brothers when they think of Harry Potter. No one thinks of Paramount when they think of Transformers. Disney does a masterful job at branding itself onto each of its films. To an extent, the studio is the auteur in this case. It has a distinct style that keeps people coming back. People have ragged on things getting Disneyfied, using that as an insult. I don't think Walt Disney would take offense to it though. He might even appreciate the fact that people recognize Disney's brilliance. That's not to say that Disney does not have its issues. It certainly does. But I think the ones that relate to originality are overblown. Disney does what it does extremely well, and its different businesses are tightly integrated. It's an entity unto itself. It understands that adaptations are part of its core, and the company and directors appreciate that. If anything, they should lean into it. They prove time and again that it's possible to put a new spin on an old story. It doesn't always land. Not all the original animated features were successes, and the same will be true of the remakes. But if anything, instead of handling the original animated features with white gloves, they should take a look at the world in its current state and see what it requires. If that means turning the original on its head, so be it. They already did it once when they went from the written word to 2D animation. I see no reason why they can't do the same when going from 2D to live action, or even going back to the root, that is, the literature, and seeing what else is possible. The original features are a part of people's childhoods, but you'll always have them. It's good to let a new generation make their own memories of movies instead of trying to force the good old days on them.